Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Trek and Faith, where we not only explore strange new worlds, but we explore the faith that weaves through them. I'm your host, John Lane, and today we are going to be diving into Season 2, Episode 2 of Star Trek, the original series, Who Mourns for Adonais. It first aired on September 22nd, 1967, and was written by Gilbert Ralston and directed by Mark Daniels. The episode begins as the Enterprise approaches a planet known as Pollux 5, where in the area is another planet by the name of Pollux 4. They go to Pollux 4, to where they encounter a giant green space hand gripping onto the ship, which would later be discovered as a field of energy created by a powerful being. When this happens, a Greek godlike figure appears on their view screen. When Kirk tells him to let go of the ship, he starts to use his power as a lesson to not mess with him by using the green space hand and crushing their ship. The godlike figure then tells them to beam onto the planet to face him, to which they do. Kirk and the crew then beam down onto the planet to find themselves in a setting similar to ancient Greece. The being then appears to them and introduces himself as Apollo. Kirk is not really all that convinced that it is Apollo, and Apollo then demands that Kirk worship him. When he and the rest of the crew refuses to, Apollo then increases in size as a show of strength. We then see that Chekhov believes that Apollo might have access to highly advanced technology, to which the rest of the crew is in agreement with that assessment as they start to scan for it, thinking that this Apollo figure really isn't an actual god. However, despite scanning for the power signals, Kirk confides in Dr. McCoy with the possibility that it might really be Apollo, and which made Kirk start questioning his belief in what makes God God. When Apollo returns to them, he requests that his servants give him what is his, including loyalty, tribute, and worship to him. Kirk is willing to talk to Apollo about this, but makes it clear that he won't bow down to anyone who might exhibit godlike powers. Apollo sees this as arrogance and that they risk facing his wrath. When the crew defy him again, he fuses their phasers and stuns Scotty, while turning crewwoman Carolyn into a woman of beauty and leads her in stride with him. Carolyn, now walking with Apollo away from the crew, asks him what happened to the other gods like him, to which he explains that they all died out and that the culture on Earth changed to where they became a very distant memory and faded out without admiration and worship from their subjects below. Meanwhile, the crew is still trying to scan for signs of energy from Apollo, and Chekhov suggests that he could be producing his own energy, as in another species like Anil, for example. Chekhov also does not believe as well, for the record, that this Apollo figure is a god by any means. McCoy also points out that there's an extra organ in his chest as well, signifying that his power could very well be internal instead of godlike. Apollo then returns to check on the crew, with Carolyn nowhere in sight. When questioning where she is, he shocks and chokes out the crew, but as he does so, he becomes weakened, signaling that his power does have its limits. Sometime later, when Apollo does return with Carolyn, he asks the crew to join him, stating that he has been nothing but compassionate and kind. However, Kirk argues that he has been the exact opposite of all that, and that while his ancestors might have fallen for a powerful man like Apollo, he would not, stating that the one was adequate enough. Angering Apollo even more, he demands that they approach him. The crew defy Apollo, angering him, mocking him. Kirk even calls his lightning power and power in general a bunch of phony fireworks as a way to make Apollo exert his power so the Enterprise can escape. However, Carolyn intervenes and begs Apollo to stop, spoiling Kirk's plan to drain him of his power. Apollo does stop, but then he tells Kirk to bring the rest of his crew down to the surface to begin their lives under him. When Apollo then makes an offer to Carolyn about being by his side for the rest of her days, she is tempted by the offer and uses that to tell the crew that Apollo only wants to live in peace. However, Kirk tells her to reject his advances, as Apollo craves love and attention, and by cutting that off from him, he will fade out and not have the power over them. Carolyn proceeds to break it off with Apollo, to which he responds very angrily and summons a storm that zaps him of enough energy to destroy the, temple structure. I'm not exactly sure myself, but from what I can tell, the temple structure that they were at for the majority of the episode was a big source of his power, but something tells me he also has power internally as well. But the Enterprise does destroy that temple structure where they were all at, once and for all, draining him of his power as he fades away and joins the other gods. This episode definitely takes a dive into the idea of other gods in the universe besides, the one. It shows that despite all of Apollo's power, most of the crew don't really bow down to him, with Carolyn being the only one that is susceptible to his power. This episode shows us that we should not fall for every great being with a higher power, as they may very well be a false idol trying to turn you with tempting offers, much like Apollo was. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, John the epistle talks about denying the incarnation of Christ and falling for false idols, stating, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." Exodus chapter 20, verse 3 also talks about the principle of worshiping other gods as a part of the Ten Commandments, stating, "You shall have no other gods before me." We definitely see the crew in the episode test Apollo's limits in order to determine who he really is, whether he's just some powerful being or an actual godlike figure. While Kirk does question whether or not this Apollo is a god or not, or if he is the actual god Apollo, him and the crew do put him to the test by questioning him and making him showcase his power and questioning what Apollo really wants in return for their services. They find out that Apollo's power is limited and that despite the fact that he asks for nothing in return but love and gratitude from them, he still wants to potentially kill them and keep them stranded on the planet for the rest of their days in order to feel relevant again. In contrast with our God, while still wanting love and respect, allows us to live our lives according to his will, and when showing signs of strength, he does it with unlimited power, and for the most part, not intending to really hurt anyone else. However, Apollo's power, as seen when he uses it for a prolonged period of time, is limited and can drain him if he exerts too much. Psalm 115 goes into detail about this as well, talking about worshiping false gods and idols, stating, "Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases him, but their idols are silver and gold, made by human hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak, eyes, but cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear, noses, but cannot smell. They have hands, but cannot feel, feet, but cannot walk, nor can they utter a sound with their throats. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them." This psalm does also help detail a bit more on worshiping false idols, and that despite the tempting qualities that they bring, they do not compare to the one true God. If Apollo was really all that high and powerful, he would not have had a limit on his power, nor would he need to subjugate his servants to a life of eternal work just because of a petty anger with him for questioning his godhood. To wrap up here, this episode provides a great look into the idea of false gods and how tempting it can be to be swayed by them if not careful. The crew of the Enterprise saw Apollo and already started questioning their beliefs on whether or not he really was a true god, but through their conviction and testing of his power, they were not able to fall for his susceptibility. There is only one God, and he loves and cares for the people under him with unlimited power and grace, two qualities that seem to be very absent from Apollo. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all on the next episode of Trek in Faith.